going to show you how to use this R script to produce a PRISMA flow diagram that can be made interactive. For the time being, the R script and the data entry file are saved on figshare. I haven't set this up as a package yet, but the easiest thing to do is just download the R script and run it using the input template that I've put together in the PRISMA.csv file, and you can change some of the columns there to put your own data in and choose to make it interactive or not. So you can find the link to this figshare item in the details of this file. But for now, we're going to download all of these three files together and open them. And you'll notice in this folder you have three files. One is the R script, the other is a schematic which shows you which box is named which, so that will help you find out what information goes where. But the main information is in the prisma.csv. So if we go ahead and open up the prisma.csv file, this has been filled in with just some dummy data for now. So this is a CSV file, which means it doesn't have any formatting. But if you double click on the edge of each cell, you'll see what the contents are. Column A is just a description of the data, and that's for internal processing purposes. So is column B, and as is column C. This is the name of the nodes that the program uses to process the data. And column C is the name of the box or other information that you will find in the flow schema. So this is the flow schema where each box is given a name. This is where the information you put in goes, and the blue boxes and the two grey and the yellow boxes are already pre-filled with descriptive information. So if we go back to the Prisma CSV file, this description just tells you what each of these boxes is about. Some of these boxes have multiple records in. If you look at the PRISMA flow diagram, you'll see that websites, citations, and organizations are three different bits of data. They each have their own value in one box. That's box 11. As do the database search results and the searches of registers. They're both in box 2. So the first four columns, A to D, you can just use for the purposes of finding out where the information goes. And then these columns are ones that you can edit. So Tooltips is what appears on what's called a mouse over, on a hover. So when you hover your mouse over the interactive version, you will see from the template that I've put online, you'll see that this text appears over each box. So whatever text you want to appear, either a description of that box in more detail or perhaps a description of the link that you provide can go in here. The ones that are NA, you should leave blank. It will just take the first record. This is where you've got two records for one box. So in box 1, we have 2 bits of data. So just put the tooltip in the first one. Then we've got a URL. Again, ignore the NAs for the URL and put the target URLs, whether that's a page in your website or a completely different page. Maybe it's an anchor to part of a single page, or perhaps a CSV file of listed studies or an RIS file. It could be a link to a whole file. But each one of these links takes you from a box to a target website. And then the K is the number that we want to put in there. So, for example, the number of previous studies that came in, or the number of database search results here. Anything that is placed in a row that's blank will just be ignored. A row where there's an NA, rather. For some of the boxes, there's multiple reasons for exclusion. So for the database and register exclusion reasons, and for the other reports exclusion reasons, there are multiple values, and you can put in as many as you want. Sometimes there are 5 exclusion reasons, sometimes there might be as many as 10 or more. And the interactive flow diagram will expand or contract depending on the number of reasons that you put in. The way to enter this data, because we're not entirely sure how many reasons you're going to put in, is to enter each reason, so reason 1 followed by a comma, and then the number of studies that were excluded or reports that were excluded because of that reason, and separate your reasons with a semicolon followed by a space. This is really important to allow those reasons to be identified and separated onto, and the comma is important to help separate the reason from the number. So please do stick to this format. Once you've got your data in there, you can save this locally somewhere on your hard drive and close it. Every time you close a CSV, it asks you if you wanted to save changes, even if you haven't saved it. I haven't made any changes, so I'm going to close that there. Then you need to proceed to R or RStudio. Some people use RStudio, some people use the base program R. I'm using RStudio, which looks like this. It has a files pane, which shows me where my files are, and the plot will appear in Viewer. So I can go ahead up to, you can't see this, but to File, and then Open File. And I'm going to go to my downloads and find the R script. So here's the R script. For those of you who aren't so familiar with R, this is a set of descriptive information that describes all of the parameters that go into the model. The model is the text in black here. I actually have several different functions. This main one to produce the plot, and it depends on a few others. One of these is to read the data in. One of these is to insert some JavaScript that adds some vertical text, because the native diagram R package that I'm using to produce the flow diagram doesn't allow text rotation, so I'm instead inserting that into the HTML using some JavaScript, but you don't really need to know that. And then the final function inserts some JavaScript to convert the text of each box into an HTML link. And it does that again by inserting some JavaScript that then changes the HTML as it's plotted. So the thing to pay attention to is firstly highlight everything, so Control A, and then or Command A if you're on a Mac, and then Control Return or Enter, or Command Return in a Mac, or you can just click Highlight All and then Run. What this has done is this has ignored all of the green text, which is instruction, and it has just loaded the functions up into my global environment, my R package. And you can see, if you click on the environment, you'll see that there are 4 functions that have been loaded in. So all I need to do now is to load in my data. If you go up to the top of the file, and in this first chunk of green text, you'll go down to some, the color scheme in your own R might be slightly different, but there'll be a tag called examples. If you just highlight the text from data down to attach and run that code, what it's going to do is going to ask me to select a data file, which is the one that I just downloaded and maybe edited. Then it's going to read in that data using a specific function to separate all of the items in each column into a separate object in the R environment. It's going to attach that data, and then I'm going to plot the figure. So first of all, I'll run this, and it will ask me to select the data. So go to Downloads and upload that file. I haven't received any errors, and the file is uploaded. It's this thing called data. If you click on data, it's actually a list of different variables. So each one of the needed data points that goes into the flow diagram has been loaded in here. We can see that the value for k is x for all of them. For the excluded variables for the database and for other searches, I've got a list of reasons and a list of values there. So the reasons and the k saved as separate data frames. And then for the tooltips, I've got a list of 22 tooltips that will pop up. And for the URLs, I've got a data frame consisting of the box number and the URL that the box will lead me to. So going back to the script, if you just highlight all of this command, which is telling it to plot, to produce an object called plot using the PRISMA flowchart function, it will read in all of these values from that data that I've just uploaded, and then it will output a plot. So again, we just click run, and the plot will appear here. This is a native HTML viewer, so if I hover over it, it's acting as an interactive version. So notice that in the function I clicked interactive equals true. If I had interactive was false, then it wouldn't be interactive. But even with the interactive version, if I want to now export this, and so you can see that the hover over tooltip says grey title box, yellow title box. You can change that text in the CSV file as I showed you. You can either export this as a static image, so you can change it to a PNG or a TIFF if you want, and save that locally. Maybe you want to put that into a manuscript, or you can click this little button saying show in new window, and that will take you to the HTML version that you can then click File, Save Page As, and export that as an HTML. So I can just save that as HTML. And then here you can see that as well as the tooltip, new studies included in the review, there's a little button that allows me to click, and it takes me to this new HTML page, which I called newstudies.html. That won't exist yet, but if you put this on your own website and just specified this URL exactly in this way, it would take you to another subpage of your own site called new_studies.html. And you could have, for example, a list or a database or a table of final studies or new studies included in your review. So there you have it. It's that simple to produce an interactive or a static version of the PRISMA 2020 preprint flow diagram. We'll be updating this so that it's a full package soon, and so that this previous studies section is optional and you can make that disappear if you want to. But for now, I hope that's useful. If you've got any questions, please let me know. If you find any bugs, definitely let me know. And I hope you enjoy it. My name is Neil Hadaway, and thanks very much for watching.